Okay, so it is Tuesday, January 2026. And I was reading the court filings this morning.
Yeah.
The ones coming out of the Northern District of Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And the disconnect is just, it's jarring. You've got the Pentagon confirming, 1,500 troops moving toward Minnesota?
Right.
But then you read the legal arguments, and the administration is insisting that this is technically not martial law.
Well, it's semantic gymnastics at its absolute finest. But that distinction, that gap between what you're seeing on the street and, what's written in the legal briefs, that's actually the most dangerous part of this whole stack we're looking at today.
It really is. And that right there, that's the mission for this deep dive. We're looking at a huge stack of reporting today. We've got stuff from Time, The Washington Post, Reuters, ProPublica.
And some really dense community safety analyses, too.
Exactly. We're trying to figure out the specific legal tools being used here, what these militarized raids we saw in Chicago are really like, and just what it all actually means for regular people.
And specifically, we really have to talk about the implications for Black communities, both here in the U.S. and, for people who are maybe looking for a way out.
The Blackset narrative.
Yeah, that idea of moving abroad for safety.
Yeah.
It hits a very, very hard wall when you start digging into these new diplomatic cables about NATO.
But we are definitely getting to the international piece.
Yeah.
That Reuters report on Greenland and NATO fracturing is.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. But let's start with the domestic picture. Everyone on social media is screaming, martial law. I see it everywhere.
Mm.
But according to the Washington Post analysis, that's not legally correct, is it? The lever they're actually pulling is something called the Insurrection Act.
That's exactly right. And for you listening, it's just so crucial to understand why that difference matters. Martial law is, it's a total suspension of civil authority. The military takes over everything, including the courts.
And that's not happening, at least not yet.
Not yet. The Insurrection Act is different. It's more like a statutory key. It's a key that unlocks the president's ability to just bypass the Posse Comitatus Act.
Which is that old post-Civil War guardrail, right? Posse Comitatus is basically the rule that says the U.S. Army cannot be your local police department.
It's the firewall. The firewall between military force and domestic policing. They can't pull you over. They can't execute a search warrant.
But the Insurrection Act.
The Insurrection Act just burns a hole right through that firewall. It lets the president deploy federal troops to suppress what they get to define as an insurrection or domestic violence.
And the reporting from Time suggests the administration is using all the unrest in Minnesota as a kind of test case for this.
That's the one. And this gets to that force multiplier concept we've talked about before. The idea isn't that you have a soldier on every single corner today.
It's the threat. The threat changes how everyone else behaves.
It changes the whole atmosphere. I mean, when the White House even signals that the Insurrection Act is on the table, it's like a green light for local and federal agencies to just adopt a wartime posture.
So you stop seeing crowd control.
And you start seeing enemy suppression. You get curfews, you get checkpoints, you get a much, much broader scope of detention.
And we don't even have to guess what that looks like. We just have to look at what happened in Chicago, that Operation Midway Blitz back in October.
Right.
I went deep into the Time and ABC News reporting on this, and honestly, the details, they read like a scene from a movie, not a police blotter in South Shore.
It's totally surreal. And for context, you have to understand, South Shore is a dense residential neighborhood. It's families, it's working class Black folks, it's mixed income housing. It is not a battlefield.
Yet at 1 o'clock in the morning, residents are waking up to the sound of Black Hawk helicopters.
Unbelievable.
And these helicopters aren't just hovering. The reports say agents were rappelling from them onto the roof of a 5-story apartment building.
Just think about the tactical escalation there. You rappel onto a roof when you are taking down a fortified compound in a war zone. To do that in a Chicago residential block, that is a statement. That's psychological warfare just as much as it is law enforcement.
They were using flashbang grenades inside the hallways.
Oh.
Kicking in doors. The WTTW reports describe it as just total chaos. I mean, the governor of Illinois called it war zone conditions.
He did.
But the thing that really stuck with me from the ProPublica investigation wasn't just the hardware. It was, who were they actually after?
And that's where the whole narrative just falls apart, isn't it? The raid was sold to the public as this big counterterrorism strike. The administration paraded it as a major victory against an imminent threat.
But then you look at someone like Johnny Manuel Quesito Ferreira. He's the guy they zip-tied while the helicopter was still hovering overhead. They put his face everywhere.
Catch.
Yeah. But you look at the court records.
Yeah.
What was he actually charged with?
Nothing. Nothing criminal. No terrorism charges, no weapons, no assault. He was processed for an immigration violation. and then deported.
So they use Blackhawks and flashbangs to serve a deportation notice.
It's asymmetrical enforcement. You use maximum, overwhelming force for a minimum charge. It creates this huge spectacle of danger that justifies the budget, justifies the authority, even if the person you actually detained is just some guy who overstayed his visa.
And the collateral damage is just massive. ProPublica profiled another man, Giancarlos Antonio Colmenares Perez. He wasn't even the target, as far as anyone can tell. But suddenly, he's on his knees, agents have guns on him, and his little 6-year-old nephew is just clinging to his leg, sobbing.
And Giancarlos had no criminal record. I think his only interaction with law enforcement before that was a traffic ticket. But because of this blitz strategy where you just flood the zone and detain everybody, he gets treated like an enemy combatant right there in his own living room.
And there was that story of Nodlis, the 19-year-old from the Reuters Dispatch. Her story just infuriated me because it shows how quickly rights just evaporate.
What happened with her?
She tries to record the agents, which is her First Amendment right, you know.
Of course.
And they just snack the phone right out of her hand.
And then there were the sexualized comments. She reported one of the agents made this really derogatory remark about Venezuelan women while he had a weapon pointed at her. This is what happens when you strip away protect and serve and replace it with search and destroy. Accountability just breaks down in real time.
She was like, oh, eventually, wasn't she? She had a pending asylum case.
She was, but I mean, the damage was already done. She gets back to her apartment and it's boarded up, all her possessions gone. It's a form of displacement that happens overnight.
Which brings us to, I think, the most chilling part of these community safety reports. This concept of disappearing. And we have to be really careful with that term, right? We're not talking about like secret CIA black sites. This is about administrative incompetence being weaponized as a tool.
That's a great way to put it. It's bureaucratic disappearing. It's what happens when the speed of the raids just completely outpaces the legal system's ability to track people.
So explain the mechanism here. Because the WBUR report I read said families were losing contact for 48, sometimes 72 hours. Where are these people going?
Well, the reporting indicates they're being moved immediately, often to facilities across state lines, like into Indiana.
Okay.
But the problem is the databases don't sync up instantly. So a wife calls the Chicago precinct. They say, we don't have him. She calls the county jail. We don't have him.
Meanwhile, he's in a van on I-65 somewhere.
Exactly. And for that window of time, which can stretch for days, that person effectively does not exist in the legal system. And you can't send a lawyer to them if you literally cannot find them.
And this isn't just happening to undocumented immigrants. This is the part of the ProPublica data that just stopped me cold. They compiled a list of over 170 incidents where U.S. citizens were detained in these sweeps.
That is the statistic that changes everything. Because we all grow up with this idea that our citizenship is a shield, you know?
Right. I'm an American. Show me a warrant or I'm walking away.
But the data says that that's a fantasy now. They found this guy in Minnesota, a U.S. citizen detained at gunpoint, forced out into the freezing cold, and held for hours before they finally got around to verifying his status.
So this is a fundamental shift in how rights actually work on the street.
It is. Citizenship is becoming what's called an affirmative defense.
Meaning you are presumed to be detainable until you can prove you're not.
The operating logic is detain first, verify later. If you get caught in the net during a raid like the one in South Shore, your citizenship doesn't stop the zip ties. It doesn't stop the trauma. It doesn't stop you from being thrown in that van. It just means that eventually, hopefully, somebody looks at your paperwork and lets you go. But until that moment, you're in the system.
That is terrifying. It flips innocent until proven guilty completely on its head. It's more like detained until proven citizen.
It is.
So is anyone pushing back? Or are the courts just letting this happen?
Oh, there's pushback, but it's a slow, grinding battle.
Yeah.
You have federal judges like Sarah Ellis in Illinois who are ordering daily briefings, demanding body cam footage. They are trying to force transparency onto a system that's designed to be opaque.
And there was Judge Jeffrey Cummings, right? He issued that order that prohibits coerced voluntary deportation.
Yeah, because agents were basically bullying people into signing away all their rights before they could even talk to a lawyer. It's a classic tactic.
So some fight.
There is, but look at the scale. You've got a few federal judges and a massive 103-page lawsuit from the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois, fighting against the full weight of Homeland Security and the Pentagon. It's David and Goliath, the local government trying to protect its own residents from the federal government.
Okay, I want to pivot here.
Yeah.
Because the natural reaction to Well, everything we just discussed, the helicopters, the disappearing, the erosion of citizenship, is to just say, I need to get out.
Of course.
I see it on my timeline constantly. The Blaxit movement, people talking about packing up and moving to Lisbon or Costa Rica or Ghana.
It's a completely rational response. If your home starts to feel like a war zone, you look for the exit.
But this is where that second half of the source stack comes in, and it's arguably just as grim. We have these diplomatic cables from Reuters and the Wall Street Journal about NATO and Greenland. And the picture they paint suggests there might not be a safe haven to run to.
This is what I call the no safe haven trap. While you have domestic enforcement ramping up here at home, the entire international stability architecture is fracturing. I mean, the friction over Greenland isn't just about an island. It's a proxy for the total collapse of trust inside NATO.
The reporting makes it sound like the administration is practically antagonizing European allies. I read that German generals are openly warning about being vulnerable.
They are?
So if I'm a Black American thinking, you know what, I'll just move to Europe and be safe, I might be walking straight into a different kind of instability.
You have to look at what happens when an alliance like NATO fractures. First, you get economic shockwaves, energy prices spike, supply chains break. But for an individual, the bigger thing is the security clampdown.
Right. When countries get scared, borders get hard.
Borders harden and xenophobia spikes. We have so much historical data on this. In times of international tension, outsiders are immediately viewed with suspicion. If you are a Black American in Lisbon or Berlin during a geopolitical crisis, you're not just an expat anymore, you're a foreigner. And you're in a country that's circling the wagons.
And Article 5, the whole collective defense clause, that's not some magic button, is it? If things really go sideways in the North Atlantic, the safety of Western Europe isn't a guarantee.
It's not. And this brings us right back to the paperwork issue. We talked about how citizenship is a paper right in Chicago. Well, when you're abroad, your safety is 100% dependent on your visa status.
And we've all sort of glamorized this digital nomad life, haven't we? Just hop on a plane, you'll figure it out when you get there.
That works in peacetime. It absolutely does not work in a time of crisis. If the geopolitical temperature drops, legal status is your only safety net. If you don't have a permanent residency pathway, if you don't have access to the national healthcare system, you are incredibly vulnerable.
So you're just trading one insecurity for another. In Chicago, you're worried about a raid. In Europe, you're worried about your visa getting canceled or not being able to see a doctor because you aren't a citizen.
And you have to remember, in a foreign country, you don't even have the theoretical protection of the U.S. Constitution. You're a guest.
Yeah.
And guests can be asked to leave or worse.
It really feels like the walls are closing in from both sides. You've got the militarization of the interior here in the U.S. and the destabilization of the exterior abroad.
That is the reality of 2026. The buffer zones are gone. Whether you are in South Shore or the south of France, safety is no longer a passive state. You don't just get to be safe. It's an active operational challenge now.
It completely reframes that whole Blaxit conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about where's the food good and the racism low.
Not anymore.
It's about where's the geopolitical stability and can I get permanent legal status there?
And crucially, can I get that status before the crisis hits? Because once the crisis starts, those doors slam shut.
This has been heavy, but really necessary. We've unpacked the difference between the rhetoric of martial law and the reality of the Insurrection Act. We've looked at the tactical escalation in Chicago, those Blackhawks.
And the administrative violence of that transfer system.
Yeah.
The disappearing.
And then finally, the illusion of the exit strategy in the face of NATO instability. I guess I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought that's been nagging me ever since I read that ProPublica file on the U.S. citizens who were detained.
What's that?
We tend to think of our rights as things we carry with us, like a wallet. But the lesson from the Midway Blitz seems to be that rights are actually environmental. They only exist if the environment allows them to. And if your environment is a rated apartment building at 1 in the morning, your rights effectively don't exist until you are out of that environment.
That is a profound way to put it. The environment dictates the rights, not the person.
Which means the fight isn't just about proving you're a citizen when they've already got you in zip ties. It's about preventing our neighborhoods from being turned into environments where rights don't apply in the first place.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you for doing this deep dive with us. I know this was some tough source material this week, but understanding the map is the only way to navigate the terrain.
Absolutely. Stay safe out there.
We'll see you next time.